The firing range on Defense Station Nebula smelled like ozone and disappointment. I, Commander Vexler of the Zentarian Elite Guard, stood with my forearms crossed, watching the latest batch of recruits struggle through basic marksmanship qualifications. 43 cycles of military instruction had taught me one universal truth. Every species thought they were exceptional until the target started moving. "Next shooter," barked Instructor Zorgith, his triple-jointed arms gesturing toward the firing line. That's when she walked up. The human female stood perhaps 1.7 meters tall, maybe 60 kilograms if you counted her equipment. Her hair, dark brown and pulled into what humans call a ponytail, swayed as she approached the firing station. What caught my attention, however, was not her small stature. No. It was the absolutely ridiculous contraption she carried. The weapon looked like someone had attached a communications array to a standard rifle, then added optics that belonged on an observatory telescope, then said, "Why not throw in a few more accessories?" A bipod extended from the front. Strange cylindrical devices protruded from various mounting points. The scope by the Void Lords. The scope alone probably cost more than my ceremonial armor. Recruit Gene, sitting beside me in the observation booth, let out a whistling laugh through his breathing slits. "Look at the human's toy. Did she raid a technical supply depot before coming here?" "Compensation," muttered Sergeant Thax, a four-armed Rigelian known for his bluntness. "Weak species always bring the fanciest equipment, as if attachments make up for inferior biology." I said nothing, but I confess my mandibles clicked in amusement. The human, whose name tag read Sarah Chen, began setting up her position with meticulous care. She deployed the bipod, adjusted it, readjusted it, then checked it again. She pulled out a small electronic device and aimed it down range. She consulted a worn notebook covered in handwritten calculations. "This is a timed qualification," Zorgith announced, his patience already wearing thin. "You have 4 minutes to engage 12 targets at varying distances. Begin when ready." Sarah, to her credit, did not rush. She settled behind her weapon with the kind of deliberation that would have gotten her killed in actual combat. Her body position looked awkward to my eyes. Humans lack the natural stability of a proper four-legged stance. Yet, she seemed to melt into the ground, becoming part of the surface beneath her. Gene leaned toward me, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. 20 credits says she hits less than half. 30 says she requests to restart after the first miss, Vax added. I studied the human more carefully. Something about her stillness felt wrong. No, not wrong. Different. Predatory, perhaps. But humans were not predators in the traditional sense. They were omnivores, scavengers, persistence hunters at best. They lacked proper claws, fangs, armored skin, or any decent natural weaponry. "Ready," Sarah announced, her voice calm. The first target appeared at 200 meters. A standard pop-up silhouette active for 3 seconds. Easy. The sound that erupted from her rifle was unexpected. Not the sharp crack of a standard kinetic weapon, but a deeper report that seemed to punch the air itself. Before my secondary eyelids could fully blink, the target displayed a perfect center mass hit. Target 2 appeared immediately. 300 meters, angled position. The rifle barked again. Hit. Jin's whistling stopped. Target 3 through 5 appeared simultaneously at varying distances between 150 and 400 meters. Sarah's movements became a fluid cycle. Acquire, breathe, press, cycle the bolt, acquire again. Each motion seemed to flow into the next without wasted energy. 3 shots, 3 hits, all center mass. Lucky, Gene muttered, but his secondary arms had stopped their dismissive gesturing. Target 6 appeared at 500 meters, partially obscured behind a barrier. Only a small portion of the silhouette showed. Sarah fired. Hit. Target 7, 8, 9. Distances now pushing 600 meters. Some targets appearing for only 2 seconds. Crack. 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 Hit, hit, hit. I found myself leaning forward in my seat, my tactical analysis protocols engaging despite myself. The human was not simply shooting. She was reading the environment. Each time before she fired, her breathing would pause, her body would settle, and the weapon would discharge at what seemed like the exact optimal moment. Target 10 flashed onto the range at 700 meters. A distance where atmospheric conditions, projectile drop, and a dozen other factors turned shooting into advanced mathematics. Sarah consulted nothing, no computer, no heads-up display, no targeting assistance. She made a minute adjustment to her scope, settled and fired. The target registered a hit in the primary scoring zone. Impossible, Jean said flatly. The wind variance alone at that distance. She is compensating, I heard myself say. Look at her barrel position before each shot. She is adjusting for conditions manually. Target 11 appeared at an absurd 800 meters, moving laterally at combat speed. This target was designed to humble overconfident recruits, to teach them the limitations of standard infantry weapons. Most shooters never even got this far in the qualification. Sarah tracked the movement. Her rifle followed smoothly, almost lazily. For a moment that stretched far too long, she did not fire. The target continued its lateral movement, eating up her available time. Then, in the half-second before the target would have disappeared, she pressed the trigger. Through my enhanced optical implants, I watched the projectile's trace. The round seemed to lead the target impossibly, arcing through space where nothing existed until the target moved into that exact space. The impact registered as a perfect central nervous system hit. Silence filled the observation booth. The kind of silence that accompanies witnessing something that should not be possible. Target 12 appeared. 900 meters. Elevated position. Wind gusts visible through the atmospheric sensors. Target exposure time 2.5 seconds. Sarah chambered her final round with mechanical precision. Her eyes settled behind the scope. Her breathing slowed until I wondered if she had achieved some form of metabolic suspension. The rifle fired. For an agonizing moment, nothing happened. At that distance, the round's flight time was perceptible. A brief eternity where physics and ballistics engaged in their eternal dance. Then the target registered. Not just a hit, a perfect absolute center mass impact that the computer system flagged as a precision shot. 12 for 12. Perfect score. 0 misses. Sarah stood, cleared her weapon with practiced efficiency, and turned toward the booth where Instructor Zorgith stood, his jaw hanging open in a very undignified manner. Qualification complete, sir, she said, her tone suggesting this was the most normal thing in the universe. Zorgith stared at his tablet, then at Sarah, then back at his tablet. This must be a system error. Nobody shoots perfect on the advanced qualification. Even our top-rated Velcrin sharpshooters average 9 out of 12. Would you like me to run it again, sir? Sarah asked. I have plenty of ammunition. That will not be necessary, a new voice interjected. We all turned. Chief Weapons Instructor Malvik stood in the doorway of the observation booth. A Caesarian war hero with 600 combat missions to his name, Malvik was not someone who appeared for routine qualifications. His scaled hide bore the scars of 4 different wars, and his optical implant glowed with tactical data streams. He descended to the range floor with measured steps, his attention fixed entirely on Sarah and her ridiculous, wonderful rifle. May I? He asked, gesturing toward her weapon. Sarah hesitated, a flash of something, possessiveness, protectiveness, crossing her features. Then she carefully engaged the safety, removed the magazine, and handed the rifle to Malvik. He examined it with the kind of reverence usually reserved for historical artifacts. His clawed digits traced over the modifications, the custom components, the worn finish that spoke of countless hours of use. This is a precision instrument, he said quietly. Not standard issue. Not even close. Where did you acquire this? I built it, sir, Sarah replied. Well, assembled it from various components. The barrel is a Krieger match grade in 6.5 Creedmoor. The action is a custom surgeon build. The stock is Macmillan bedded and reinforced. The scope is a Schmidt and Bender with custom turrets I had machined for my specific ballistic profile. You built this yourself? Malvik interrupted, genuine surprise coloring his tone. A human civilian had access to these components. Sarah's expression shifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but something close. Humans have a certain relationship with firearms, sir. Where I come from, precision rifle shooting is a discipline, a sport for some, a lifestyle for others. I have been doing this since I was 12. 12 cycles, then? Jean interjected from the booth. Your species allows juveniles access to weapons? 12 years, Sarah corrected. And yes, supervised at first. Obviously. My father was a competitive shooter. He taught me that shooting is not about the weapon. It is about understanding physics, reading the environment, controlling your own biology. The rifle is just the tool that expresses that knowledge. Malvik handed the weapon back to her with noticeably more respect than he showed most recruits. How many rounds have you put through this particular rifle? Through this build? About 47,000. Through various rifles over my lifetime, probably north of 300,000 rounds, maybe more. I stopped counting after the first 100,000. The numbers meant nothing to Jean or Thax, but I knew I had served with enough military specialists to understand what those numbers represented. That was not casual hobby shooting. That was professional-level dedication. That was someone who had spent years, perhaps decades, perfecting a single skill to an almost obsessive degree. Your groupings, Malvik continued, at 700 meters. What is your average? Depends on conditions. On a calm day, half-minute of angle. So about 3.5 inches. On a windy day, maybe 0.75 MOA if I read it right. 5 inches if I am having a bad day. More silence. Jin's secondary arms had begun an involuntary tremor. A Rigelian stress response. Malvik's optical implant cycled through several colors as he processed this information. Most military sharpshooters in the Galactic Defense Force consider 1 minute of angle at 500 meters to be acceptable combat accuracy. Different standards, Sarah said with a slight shrug. In precision rifle competition back home, 1 MOA is beginner level. The top shooters are running quarter MOA guns and reading wind down to half-mile-per-hour variations. When your competition is decided by fractions of an inch at 1,000 yards, you either get very good or you go broke buying ammunition while getting humiliated. She said this without arrogance, just stating facts, which somehow made it worse, or better. I was not entirely sure which. Zorgith finally found his voice. You are assigned to standard infantry training. Your file says nothing about specialist qualifications. Because I do not have any, sir, Sarah replied. Not military ones anyway. I have a few civilian competition wins, some instructor certifications, but I joined the GDF as a basic recruit. Figured I would let my performance speak for itself rather than making claims I could not back up. Malvik's mandibles clicked in what I recognized as approval. A wise approach. Too many recruits arrive with inflated credentials and deflated abilities. He paused, his optical implant focusing on Sarah with unsettling intensity. Tell me, recruit, have you ever engaged a living target? The question hung in the air like a gravitational anomaly. Sarah's expression did not change, but something in her posture shifted. A slight stiffening, a barely perceptible tension. No, sir, she said quietly. Paper, steel, and reactive targets only. I have never pointed a weapon at anything I was not willing to destroy. And I have only been willing to destroy inanimate objects. The discipline I learned was about precision and control, not killing. Good, Malvik said, nodding slowly. Then you understand the weight of what you can do. That is more important than the skill itself. He turned to Zorgith. I am appropriating this recruit. She will be reassigned to the Advanced Marksmanship Program pending full evaluation. Sir, the advanced program is for candidates with specialist training, Zorgoth protested. She has only been here for 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, she has demonstrated more fundamental proficiency than most of your graduates achieve in 6 months. Malvik's tone left no room for argument. I will handle the administrative details. Torres, report to Range 7 tomorrow at 0600. Bring your rifle and enough ammunition for a full diagnostic session. We will see exactly what you are capable of. Yes, sir, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite what I suspected was significant internal excitement. As she collected her equipment and headed toward the exit, Gene turned to me with all 3 of his eyes wide. Did that actually just happen? It did, I confirmed, my tactical processors still analyzing what I had witnessed. But she is human, Thack said, as if this explained everything. Humans are, they are not. I mean, their military record is practically non-existent on the galactic stage. They have been part of the GDF for less than a decade. They have no famous warriors, no legendary battles, no reputation beyond being decent support troops. I watched Sarah disappear through the range exit, that absurdly equipped rifle slung across her back with casual familiarity. Perhaps, I said slowly, we have not been paying attention to the right things. We measure species by their technology, their physical advantages, their historical military achievements. But what if humans developed their warfare capabilities differently? Not through superior strength or advanced weapons, but through refinement, obsession, even taking simple tools and mastering them to a degree that transcends the tool itself. That is ridiculous, Thax declared. Warfare requires strength, speed, natural advantages. Does it? I interrupted, surprising myself. Or does warfare require the ability to make your enemy cease functioning? Which can be accomplished through strength. Yes. Or through placing a small projectile in exactly the right location from a distance where the enemy's strength becomes irrelevant. Jin's breathing slits flared in agitation. You are saying one human with a rifle is equivalent to a Regalian shock trooper? No, I said carefully. I am saying one human with a rifle with 47,000 rounds of practice behind that specific rifle, with the knowledge and dedication to read atmospheric conditions and calculate ballistic solutions in her head, might be considerably more dangerous than a Regalian shock trooper. At least at any distance beyond arm's reach. We sat in uncomfortable silence as the next recruit, a Velcrin with all the proper military bearing and none of Sarah's quiet confidence, stepped up to the line with his standard-issue rifle. He managed 6 hits out of 12, which was considered above average. It looked pathetic. That night, I accessed the Human Cultural Database, something I confess I had never bothered to do before. If one human civilian could demonstrate such frightening competence with a rifle, what else had we been missing about this species? What I found kept me awake well past my normal rest cycle. Humans, it turned out, had a very special relationship with projectile weapons, a relationship spanning thousands of their years. They had taken the simple concept of throwing objects at enemies and refined it into an art form, a science, a cultural phenomenon. They had competitions for shooting precision that made our military qualifications look like children's games. They had civilians who spent their personal resources to achieve levels of marksmanship that exceeded most military standards. And perhaps most disturbing, they did this for fun. They voluntarily spent thousands of their currency units, countless hours, and enormous mental effort to become better at shooting. Not because they were soldiers, not because they needed to hunt for survival, but because they enjoyed the challenge. They enjoyed the pursuit of perfection. What kind of species does that? What kind of species treats the ability to kill at long distance as a recreational hobby? I thought about Sarah's calm demeanor, her methodical approach, her complete lack of arrogance despite possessing skills that would make her a legend in most military units. Then I thought about what Instructor Malvik had whispered to Zorgoth as Sarah left the range. I had enhanced auditory sensors. I heard it clearly. Only snipers move like that. Only people who have spent years behind a scope understand stillness that way. The humans have been breeding specialists without even trying, just through their cultural obsessions. He was right. And that thought terrified me far more than any conventional military threat ever had. Range 7 existed in a different reality than the standard qualification courses. Located in the eastern quadrant of Station Nebula, it stretched across 12 kilometers of variable terrain complete with atmospheric simulators, elevation changes, and environmental hazards that would make most recruits question their career choices. This was where the Galactic Defense Force trained its precision specialists, the shooters who could terminate hostile targets before conventional forces even knew combat had begun. I arrived at 0530, 30 minutes before Sarah's scheduled evaluation. Call it professional curiosity. Call it the need to understand what I had witnessed the previous day. Honestly, I could not explain my own motivations, which troubled me more than I cared to admit. Chief Instructor Malvik stood at the control station, manipulating holographic displays that showed the entire range layout. He noticed my approach but said nothing, simply gesturing toward an observation position. "You are early, Vexler," he commented, his optical implant tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. "I wish to observe, sir, if permitted." "Permitted," he confirmed. "In fact, I would value your tactical assessment. You have combat experience in asymmetric warfare scenarios. Tell me what you see." What I saw moments later was Sarah arriving with her rifle case and a backpack that probably weighed half her body mass. She wore standard utility fatigues, her hair again pulled back in that simple ponytail, her expression focused but not tense. "Recruit Chen, reporting as ordered, sir," she announced, snapping a salute that would have satisfied the most particular drill instructor. Malvik returned the salute. "At ease. Today we determine if yesterday was exceptional performance or standard capability. You will engage targets at distances from 300 to 1,500 meters under various conditions. You will have limited time to calculate solutions. You will face scenarios designed to break concentration and test decision-making under pressure. Questions?" "No, sir." "Ready when you are." Malvik pulled up the first scenario. Target Alpha. Distance 420 meters. Wind variable, gusting from southwest at 8 to 15 miles per hour. Target exposure 5 seconds. Engage when ready. Sarah dropped into position with that same unsettling fluidity, deploying her bipod and settling behind the scope. She chambered around, her movements economical and precise. For perhaps 3 seconds, she remained absolutely motionless. Then she fired. The target registered a hit in the primary elimination zone. Center mass slightly left to compensate for wind drift. Time from position to shot, 3.2 seconds, Malvik noted. Acceptable. Target Beta. Distance 670 meters. Wind calm. Target is partially obscured behind barrier. Only head and upper torso visible. Assess and engage. Sarah adjusted her position fractionally. This time she took 4 seconds before firing. Another perfect hit. Target Gamma. Distance 940 meters. Wind, crosswind from east 12 miles per hour sustained. Target moving left to right at walking speed. You have 8 seconds. I watched Sarah's breathing pattern change. She settled deeper into her position, tracking the target's movement. 6 seconds elapsed. 7. At 7.5 seconds, her rifle barked. The target registered a hit just as it reached the edge of its travel zone. Adequate, Malvik said, though his tone suggested he meant considerably more than adequate. Now we increase difficulty. Multiple targets will appear simultaneously at various distances. You will prioritize based on threat assessment protocols. Targets designated red are high value, yellow are medium value, blue are low value. Your ammunition is limited. Choose wisely. The range erupted with targets. 12 of them scattered across 1,000 meters of varied terrain. 3 red, 4 yellow, 5 blue. Sarah did not panic, did not rush. Instead, she took 2 seconds to scan the entire field through her scope, then began engaging targets in a sequence that took me a moment to understand. She started with the furthest red target at 1,300 meters. The most difficult shot, the one most shooters would save for last if they attempted it at all. She fired, cycled her bolt, then immediately acquired the second red target at 900 meters, fired again. The third red target appeared at only 400 meters, almost insultingly close after the previous shots. She put a round through it in less than 2 seconds. Then she methodically worked through the yellow targets, prioritizing by distance and exposure time rather than simple proximity. The blue targets she ignored completely until all higher value threats were eliminated. Total time, 41 seconds. Total rounds expended, 9. Total hits, 9. You left 3 targets active, Malvik observed. Low-value targets at close range, sir, Sarah replied calmly. In a real scenario, conventional infantry could handle those threats. My limited ammunition is better preserved for targets they cannot effectively engage. Resource management seemed more important than achieving a perfect score. Malvik's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme approval in Caesarian body language. Correct assessment. Most recruits empty their weapons trying to hit everything, then find themselves useless when actual high-value targets appear. You think like an asset, not a soldier. Good. He paused, manipulating his controls to configure something new. Now we test your limitations. I am going to make you fail, Chen. I need to know where your breaking point exists. Understood? Yes, sir. I would expect nothing less. What followed was brutal. Malvik threw scenarios at Sarah that would have overwhelmed veteran shooters. Targets at extreme distances with minimal exposure time. Environmental conditions that bordered on impossible. Situations requiring split-second decisions where every choice had consequences. Sarah missed her first shot at the 90-minute mark. A target at 1,600 meters in gusting winds with only a 3-second exposure window. Her round passed just left of the silhouette, missing by perhaps 6 inches. She did not curse, did not show frustration. She simply chambered another round and waited for the next target. Why did you miss? Malvik asked immediately. Misjudged the wind gradient at distance, sir, Sarah replied without hesitation. I compensated for the wind speed at my position, but failed to account for the increased velocity at the target's elevation. Environmental reading error, not mechanical failure. Correct. Again, same target, same conditions. This time, Sarah took an extra second. I saw her eyes flick to a small indicator on her scope, then back to the target. When she fired, the hit registered perfectly. Better. What changed? I used the mirage patterns visible through the scope to estimate wind speed at the target rather than relying on conditions at my position. More accurate data input, better solution. Malvik's optical implant cycled through several colors. You can read mirage for wind estimation. That is an advanced technique rarely used outside specialized units. It is standard in long-range competition, sir, Sarah replied. When you are shooting targets the size of dinner plates at a mile, you learn to read every environmental indicator available. Mirage, vegetation movement, dust patterns, even the way your own heat waves interact with the sight picture. Everything tells you something. I found myself leaning forward, fascinated despite my better judgment. This human, this small, seemingly fragile creature, spoke about reading an environment with the same intensity my species used when discussing territorial conquest. Malvik continued the evaluation for another hour. He introduced moving targets, electronic countermeasures, simulated stress scenarios with sounds of combat and incoming fire. Sarah handled each challenge with the same methodical approach. Sometimes succeeding brilliantly, occasionally failing, but always analyzing and adapting. At the 3-hour mark, Malvik finally called a halt. Enough. Clear your weapon and approach the observation station. Sarah complied, her movements showing the first signs of fatigue. Maintaining absolute stillness and concentration for 3 hours took a physical toll, regardless of species. When she reached the station, Malvik pulled up a holographic display showing her complete performance metrics. Hit percentage, 87% across all scenarios. Average time to first shot, 3.8 seconds. Longest successful engagement, 1,460 meters. Decision-making score, 92% optimal choices. These numbers, Malvik said slowly, would qualify you for immediate placement in our Tier 2 sniper program. Tier 1 remains reserved for candidates with actual combat experience, but your raw skill is undeniable. He paused, his expression becoming more serious. However, before I make any recommendations, I need you to answer something honestly. Why are you here, recruit? You possess skills that took years to develop. Skills that have no practical civilian application in human society. Unless I am misinformed. You could have remained on Earth, competed in your sport, lived comfortably. Instead, you joined a military organization, left your planet, and volunteered for an infantry position that would never utilize your actual capabilities. Why? For the first time since I had observed her, Sarah's composure cracked slightly. Not much, just a brief hesitation. A flicker of something deeper behind her eyes. Because precision rifle shooting taught me something, sir, she began carefully. It taught me that humans are not naturally gifted at very much. We are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the toughest. We do not have built-in weapons or armor or enhanced senses. What we have is the ability to learn, to practice, to take something we are mediocre at and become exceptional through sheer dedication. She gestured to her rifle. This weapon does not make me special. Thousands of humans can shoot as well as I can. Some shoot better. What makes the difference is that we as a species, we do not accept our limitations as permanent. We see a challenge and we obsess over it until it stops being a challenge. She looked directly at Malvik. When I heard that humanity had joined the Galactic Defense Force, that we were the new species trying to prove ourselves worthy of inclusion, I knew I had to be part of that. Because if there is one thing humans understand, it is being the underdog who has to work twice as hard to earn half the respect. Malvik regarded her silently for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Vexler, your assessment. I chose my words carefully. In Zentarian tactical doctrine, we classify threats by their immediate danger versus their sustainable danger. A shock trooper presents immediate danger through overwhelming force. But a sniper presents sustainable danger, the ability to inflict casualties consistently over extended periods while remaining undetected and unengaged. I paused, gathering my thoughts. If Chen represents a standard example of human marksmanship potential, then we have categorized humans incorrectly in our threat assessments. Explain, Malvik commanded. We assumed humans would fill support roles, technical positions, areas where their lack of physical advantages would not matter. But if their cultural development has produced a population with widespread familiarity with precision weapons, if they have literally millions of civilians who practice marksmanship as recreation, then they represent a strategic asset we did not anticipate. Not as frontline troops, but as force multipliers. One human sniper position correctly could influence an entire battlefield without ever being detected. Sarah looked uncomfortable with the analysis, but she did not contradict it. Malvik's mandibles clicked again. An astute observation. The Galactic Defense Force has operated for 400 cycles under certain assumptions about how different species contribute to military effectiveness. Humans have been here for less than 10 cycles. We placed them where we thought they would fit, not where they might excel. He turned back to Sarah. You are reassigned effective immediately. You will join the Advanced Reconnaissance Training Program. Your skills will be documented, analyzed, and used to develop new training protocols. You may also be asked to instruct other recruits, human and non-human, in precision marksmanship techniques. Questions? Just one, sir. Will I see actual deployment, or am I being turned into a training curiosity? Malvik's expression shifted into what I recognized as a predatory smile. Oh, you will deploy, Chen. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and specialists with your capabilities do not sit in classrooms for long. But first, we need to understand if you are an anomaly or if humanity has been hiding an entire military doctrine in plain sight, disguised as sporting competitions and civilian hobbies. I am not an anomaly, sir, Sarah said quietly. I am just someone who took a hobby seriously. Back home, there are competition shooters who make me look like a beginner. There are hunters who have been reading wind and estimating range since they were children. There are military veterans who forgot more about fieldcraft than I will ever learn. She met Malvik's gaze directly. If you want to see what humans can really do, wait until some of them start arriving with actual combat experience combined with our cultural background in marksmanship. The implications of that statement settled over the observation station like a heavy gravity field. I thought about Earth, a planet of 8 billion humans. If even a tiny fraction of them possessed skills comparable to Sarah, if even 0.1% had spent years refining their ability to place projectiles with precision, that was 8 million potential snipers. 8 million individuals who could influence battlefields from distances where conventional forces could not respond. 8 million quiet, patient, dedicated shooters who treated killing at long range as a solvable problem rather than an impressive feat. Malvik seemed to be having similar thoughts. Dismissed, Chen. Report to Building 7, Room 312 tomorrow at 0800 for in-processing into the advanced program. Bring your gear and prepare for an extended training cycle. You are about to become very busy. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sarah saluted, collected her equipment, and departed with the same unpretentious efficiency she had displayed throughout. After she left, Malvik turned to me with an expression I had never seen on his scarred features. Uncertainty mixed with something that might have been concern. We mocked her rifle setup, he said quietly. All those attachments, all that customization. We assumed it was compensation for inadequacy. But it was not compensation. It was optimization. She built that weapon to extend her capabilities to their absolute maximum, then trained until she could utilize every fraction of performance it offered. Yes, sir, I agreed. And if human military doctrine follows similar patterns, if they approach warfare with the same obsessive refinement they apply to their hobbies, then we have underestimated them catastrophically. Not because they are stronger or faster or more advanced, Malvik finished, but because they are willing to dedicate absurd amounts of time and resources to becoming exceptional at very specific tasks. They turn limitations into specializations. He pulled up a star map showing human-controlled space. It was not impressive compared to the major powers. Just a few dozen systems, a relatively new addition to galactic civilization. I am going to recommend a comprehensive review of human capabilities, Malvik continued. Not just military records, but cultural analysis. If their civilians treat complex skills as entertainment, what does that tell us about their potential military applications? If a random recruit with no formal military training can perform at specialist levels, what happens when they start sending us their actual professionals? I had no answer. None of us did. What we had witnessed was not superior technology or genetic advantage. It was something more subtle and perhaps more dangerous. A species that became exceptional through pure stubborn dedication. They took their weaknesses and worked around them. They found what they could do and pushed it to extremes. Chapter 4, The Human Phenomenon. 3 days later, I received a message from Malvik. He had accessed Earth databases and found something he thought I should see. It was footage from a human competition called the Precision Rifle Series Championship. I watched humans engage targets at distances exceeding 2,000 meters. I watched them calculate solutions accounting for wind, temperature, barometric pressure, even the curvature of their planet. I watched them do this not for military purposes, not for survival, but for points and trophies and personal satisfaction. Then Malvik sent me casualty projections, theoretical scenarios where human snipers were deployed in various combat situations. The numbers were disturbing. A single well-positioned human specialist could potentially inflict casualties far exceeding their individual value as a target. And if they worked in teams, if they coordinated. The galaxy had spent 400 cycles developing military doctrines based on conventional warfare, massed forces, technological superiority, overwhelming firepower applied at close to medium ranges. Humans had spent thousands of years figuring out how to kill things that were far away, often things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. They had refined it into science. They had made it into art. They had turned it into recreation. And now they were here, joining our military, bringing all that accumulated knowledge and cultural obsession with them. 6 months after Sarah's evaluation, I saw her again. She wore the insignia of a certified GDF sniper instructor. She was leading a class of 20 recruits, 15 of them non-human, teaching them the fundamentals of long-range marksmanship. I stopped to observe. The recruits looked skeptical at first, just as we all had. This small human was going to teach them advanced combat techniques. Then she took them to the range. She showed them what proper fundamentals looked like. She demonstrated reading environmental conditions. She explained ballistic mathematics in terms anyone could understand. And then, because some lessons require demonstration, she engaged a target at 1,800 meters in variable wind conditions with 3 shots. All 3 hits clustered within a circle smaller than my fist. The skepticism evaporated. The recruits leaned forward, suddenly eager to learn from this unassuming human who had just made the impossible look routine. As I walked away, I realized something that would have seemed absurd just months earlier. The galaxy had not been mocking Sarah's rifle setup. The galaxy had been staring at the future of asymmetric warfare without recognizing it. They had mocked her right up until the moment an instructor whispered a truth that should have been obvious. Only snipers move like that. Only humans, it seemed, turned marksmanship into a cultural phenomenon. And now the galaxy would learn what that meant. 2 years after Sarah Chen first stepped onto that firing range, I found myself serving alongside her on a remote outpost in the contested border region between GDF space and the Cthar Dominion. The Cthar were a formidable species, physically imposing, technologically advanced, and militarily aggressive. They had been pushing into GDF territory for months, testing our defenses with small-scale incursions. Our outpost, designated Forward Operating Base X7, was strategically positioned near a critical hyperspace lane. The Cthar wanted it badly, and we were determined to hold it. Sarah had been assigned as our primary long-range specialist. She had proven herself in training exercises and simulations, but this would be her first real combat deployment. I found myself observing her closely, wondering how she would perform when lives were on the line. The first attack came at dawn. A Cthar strike force, using their advanced cloaking technology, attempted to breach our perimeter. Our conventional defenses held them back initially, but they adapted quickly, targeting our sensor arrays and weapon emplacements with precision strikes of their own. From my command position in the central bunker, I watched the tactical displays as the battle unfolded. The Cthar were methodical, professional, and deadly. They had identified our command structure and were attempting to isolate our leadership. "Commander," a communications officer reported, "the Cthar have taken out our eastern sensor array. We're blind on that flank." I was about to redirect our mobile units when a new voice cut through the chaos. "Commander Vexler, this is Chen. I have eyes on the eastern flank. The Cthar have set up a command post behind the rock formation at coordinates 47.21.89 by 13.45.67. They're coordinating their attack from there." "Confirmed, Chen," I responded, my mind racing. "Can you engage?" "Negative on direct engagement," she replied calmly. "They're shielded. But I can see their communications array. If I can disable that, it should disrupt their coordination." "Do it," I ordered. Through the base's external cameras, I caught a glimpse of Sarah positioned on the western tower, her rifle set up with that same meticulous precision I had witnessed years ago. The Cthar command post was over 1,500 meters away, with partial concealment and active electronic countermeasures. Even for a specialist, it was a difficult shot. "Wind is picking up," Sarah reported, her voice steady. Crosswind from the northeast, approximately 12 miles per hour with gusts to 18. Distance 1,542 meters. Target partially shielded. Aiming for the communications antenna. I watched the tactical display, counting the seconds. 30 seconds passed. 45. A full minute. Chin, status? I asked. Waiting for the right moment, she replied. The Kthar are cycling their shield frequencies. There's a 0.8 second window when the antenna is exposed. I need to time it perfectly. Another 30 seconds passed. The battle raged below, with our forces slowly being pushed back. Now, Sarah said simply. A single shot rang out. On the tactical display, the Kthar command post's communications icon flickered and died. Target neutralized, Sarah reported. Their coordination should be disrupted for at least 10 minutes while they reroute through backup systems. She was right. The Kthar attack immediately lost its synchronization. Units that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly fell into disarray. Our forces seized the opportunity, pushing back and eventually repelling the assault. Later that day, I found Sarah cleaning her rifle with methodical precision. She showed no signs of stress or excitement from the combat, as if she had simply completed another training exercise. That was exceptional work, Chen, I said. Thank you, sir, she replied without looking up from her task. The shot was easier than it looked. The Kthar have predictable shield cycling patterns. Once you identify the rhythm, it's just a matter of timing. I studied her for a moment. Does it ever bother you? Taking a life, even an enemy's? She finally looked up, her expression thoughtful. I don't think of it as taking a life. I think of it as solving a problem. The Kthar command post was a problem. The antenna was the solution. I don't take pleasure in it, but I don't lose sleep over it either. She returned to her cleaning. Humans learned a long time ago that if you're going to be good at something, you can't let emotion interfere with the mechanics. Shooting is mechanics. Breathing, trigger control, reading the environment. The target is just the endpoint of the equation. I nodded slowly, understanding a bit more about the human mindset. They had somehow separated the act of killing from the emotional weight of it, transforming it into a technical problem to be solved. The Kthar will be back, I said. And they'll be more cautious next time. They will, Sarah agreed. They'll adapt their tactics. They might even try to counter me specifically. That's what makes this interesting. Interesting? I asked, surprised by her choice of words. Yes, interesting, she replied with the hint of a smile. It's like a chess game, but with physics and ballistics. They make a move, I respond. They adapt, I adapt. The side that understands the principles better usually wins. I left her to her preparations, marveling at her perspective. She viewed combat not as a life-or-death struggle but as a complex problem to be solved through superior knowledge and execution. The Kthar did return, and they did adapt. 2 weeks after the first attack, they launched a more sophisticated assault. This time, they deployed their own snipers, specialists equipped with advanced railguns that could fire projectiles at hypersonic speeds. Our outpost came under precise, devastating fire. Commanders, communications specialists, and weapons operators were targeted with deadly accuracy. The Kthar had clearly identified Sarah as a threat during the previous engagement and were now attempting to neutralize her. From the command bunker, I watched as our casualties mounted. The Kthar snipers were good, exceptionally good. They were targeting our leadership with chilling precision. Chen, I communicated over the secure channel, status report. I've identified 2 Kthar snipers, she replied, her voice calm despite the chaos. One on the northern ridge, approximately 1,200 meters. Another in the eastern tower, about 900 meters. They're using some kind of hypersonic railgun. The projectile is nearly impossible to track. Can you engage them? Negative, sir. They're using active targeting systems that would detect any shot from my position before it reached them. They'd have me targeted before my round arrived. Then what's our solution? I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. There was a brief pause. The same solution as any complex ballistic problem, sir. Change the variables. What do you mean? Their systems are designed to detect incoming projectiles and calculate their origin. But they're calibrated for standard ballistic trajectories. If I change the parameters enough, I might be able to bypass their detection. How? By using indirect fire, she explained. I'll aim at a reflective surface, a specific rock formation that will deflect the round toward the target. The trajectory will be unconventional enough that their systems might not flag it as a threat. I was stunned. You're planning to bank a shot off a rock formation to hit a target 1,200 meters away? That's impossible. No, sir, she corrected calmly. It's just a matter of calculating the angles correctly. The physics is straightforward. The execution is challenging. Do it, I ordered, though I had serious doubts about the feasibility of her plan. I watched the tactical display as Sarah moved to a new position. The Kthar snipers continued their deadly work, picking off our personnel with methodical precision. Ready, Sarah reported. Targeting the northern sniper first. The deflection point is a granite outcropping 400 meters from my position. The angle of incidence will redirect the round at a 47-degree angle toward the target. Execute when ready, I said, still skeptical. A shot rang out. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, on the tactical display, the northern Kthar sniper icon flickered and died. Target neutralized, Sarah reported. The deflection worked. Their system didn't flag the incoming projectile because it wasn't on a direct trajectory to their position. Before I could respond, she continued. The second sniper is relocating. He's moving to the western ridge. I'll need to recalculate. The battle raged below as Sarah worked her calculations. The remaining Kthar sniper, having realized his partner was eliminated, began searching for Sarah's position. He's using active scanning now, Sarah reported. He'll find me soon. I need to take the shot before he pinpoints my location. Time is critical, Chen, I said. I know, sir. The deflection point will be different this time. There's a metallic deposit in the rock face 600 meters west of my position. If I hit it at the right angle, it should create a plasma burst that will temporarily blind his targeting systems. The follow-up shot can then eliminate him. You're planning to create a plasma burst with a rifle bullet? I asked, incredulous. The metallic content of that specific rock formation is high enough that a hypervelocity impact should ionize the surface. Yes, she replied as if discussing the weather. It's a temporary effect, but it should give me the window I need. Do it, I ordered. 2 shots rang out in quick succession. The first created a bright flash on the distant rock face. The second followed a moment later. Second target neutralized, Sarah reported. The Kthar snipers have been eliminated. The remaining Kthar forces, having lost their precision support, soon fell into disarray. Our forces, bolstered by this development, counterattacked and eventually repelled the assault. Later, I found Sarah making adjustments to her rifle. She had small burns on her hands from handling the weapon during the intense firefight. How did you know that would work? I asked, still amazed by her unorthodox solution. I didn't, not with certainty, she admitted. But I calculated the probabilities. The first deflection shot had a 73% chance of success. The plasma burst tactic had only a 42% chance of working, but it was the best option available. She looked at me with those calm, analytical eyes. In precision shooting, you learn that sometimes the impossible shot is just a matter of understanding the variables better than anyone else. Humans have been doing that for centuries with firearms. We keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, not because we're physically superior, but because we refuse to accept that something can't be done. I shook my head in wonder. The Kthar are physically stronger, technologically advanced in many ways, and militarily experienced. Yet you defeated their best specialists with creative problem-solving. We humans have always had to find creative solutions, Sarah replied with a shrug. When you're not the biggest or strongest species in the ecosystem, you learn to use your brain. We've had thousands of years of practice at being the underdog. Hashtag Chapter 8, The Turning Point. The Cthar, frustrated by their failures at FOB-X7, launched a full-scale assault 3 weeks later. This time, they brought overwhelming force, capital ships, ground assault vehicles, and thousands of troops. Our small outpost stood little chance against such an attack. GDF High Command, recognizing the strategic importance of our position, dispatched a relief fleet. But it would take days to arrive. We had to hold out until then. As the Cthar fleet appeared in orbit, I gathered my senior officers for a final briefing. Sarah was there, along with the other specialists who had been assigned to our outpost. The situation is dire, I began, not sugarcoating the reality. The Cthar have us outgunned and outmanned. Conventional tactics won't be enough to hold this position. I looked at Sarah. Chen, your performance against their snipers has not gone unnoticed. High Command has requested your assessment of how we might leverage your unique capabilities. Sarah stepped forward, her expression as calm as ever. The Cthar rely heavily on their command and control structure. Their forces are well coordinated but lack flexibility when their leadership is disrupted. She pointed to a holographic display of the battlefield. If we can target their command elements with precision strikes, we might be able to create enough chaos to hold out until reinforcements arrive. Their command ships are shielded, I objected. Our conventional weapons can't penetrate them. We don't need to destroy the ships, Sarah countered. We need to disrupt their ability to coordinate ground forces. If we can target their communication arrays, sensor systems, and command personnel, we can create confusion and disorganization. How do you propose to do that? I asked. Their ships are in orbit. By using their own technology against them, she replied. The Cthar use a network of orbital relay satellites to coordinate ground forces. These satellites have narrow transmission windows that must be precisely aligned to function. She manipulated the holographic display, showing the satellite network. If we can disable key satellites at critical moments, we can disrupt their coordination. The satellites themselves are small, fast-moving targets, but they follow predictable orbits. You want to shoot down satellites with a rifle? I asked, incredulous. Not shoot them down, sir, she corrected. Just damage their communication arrays. The arrays are delicate, and a well-placed round could disable them without destroying the satellite itself. I stared at her, then at the display. The satellites are in low orbit. Even if you could hit one, the Cthar would immediately trace the shot back to your position. Not if we use the same deflection tactics I employed against their snipers, she replied. There are several metallic deposits in the nearby mountain ranges that could serve as deflection points. The angles would be complex, but the physics is sound. I looked around the room at my other officers. They seemed as skeptical as I was. The probability of success is low, Sarah acknowledged. But it's our best chance. The Cthar don't expect us to be able to target their orbital assets. The element of surprise might give us the edge we need. I considered her proposal. It was audacious, seemingly impossible, and our only real hope. Make it happen, I ordered. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Sarah and her team set up multiple firing positions, calculating complex trajectories that would allow their shots to deflect off various surfaces and strike the orbital satellites at precise angles. The Cthar ground assault began as expected. Our forces were pushed back, but we managed to hold key defensive positions. Still, it was clear we couldn't last long against their superior numbers and firepower. Chen, status, I communicated as our eastern perimeter began to collapse. First satellite targeted, she reported calmly. Deflection point established. Firing in 3, 2, 1. A shot rang out. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, reports began coming in from across the battlefield. Commander, the Cthar coordination is breaking down, a tactical officer reported. Their units are receiving conflicting orders. Some are standing down, others are advancing without support. First target neutralized, Sarah confirmed. Moving to second satellite. The Kthar are trying to jam our communications, but they haven't identified our firing positions yet. The battle continued, but the dynamics had shifted. The Kthar forces, once so well coordinated, now moved in confusion. Units advanced without artillery support, retreated without covering fire, and generally fell into disarray. Over the next several hours, Sarah and her team systematically disabled the Kthar satellite network. With each satellite lost, the enemy's coordination deteriorated further. By the time the GDF relief fleet arrived, the Kthar ground forces were in full retreat, their orbital support crippled, their command structure in chaos. ## Chapter 9, Recognition and Reflection. In the aftermath of the battle, Sarah Chen became something of a legend within the GDF. Her unorthodox tactics had saved the outpost and turned a certain defeat into a strategic victory. She was awarded the Galactic Cross for Valor, promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and given command of the newly formed Specialized Marksmanship Division. I was reassigned to GDF High Command as an advisor on asymmetric warfare tactics, largely based on my reports about Sarah's capabilities. It was a position that allowed me to influence military doctrine on a galactic scale. 6 months after the Battle of Fob 7, I found myself reviewing applications for the new Specialized Marksmanship Division. To my surprise, hundreds of humans had applied, along with representatives from dozens of other species. What fascinated me were the human applications. Many of them listed civilian achievements that would have been impressive for military specialists: precision shooting championships, hunting records, instructor certifications. These humans, like Sarah, had spent years perfecting their skills not for military purposes but as a hobby or sport. I requested a meeting with Sarah to discuss the phenomenon. The applications are remarkable, I told her as we reviewed the data in her office. Hundreds of humans with civilian qualifications that exceed our military standards. How is this possible? Sarah smiled slightly. Humans have always had a fascination with projectile weapons. On Earth, we've been developing firearms for nearly 1,000 years. In that time, we've refined the art and science of marksmanship to an extraordinary degree. She pulled up some historical records. Competitive shooting dates back centuries on Earth. What started as practical training for soldiers and hunters evolved into a sport with its own culture, equipment, and techniques. Humans don't just shoot because they have to, they shoot because they want to be better at it. But why? I asked. Why would a species devote so much time and resources to perfecting a skill for recreational purposes? Because it's challenging, Sarah replied simply. Humans are drawn to challenges that require precision, concentration, and continuous improvement. Marksmanship combines physics, mathematics, and mental discipline in a way that appeals to our problem-solving nature. She leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. Think about it, Commander. Humans aren't the strongest, fastest, or most durable species. We don't have natural weapons or armor. What we do have is an ability to focus intensely on specific skills and push them to extremes. Marksmanship is just one example of that tendency. I considered her words. So when the GDF recruited humans, we got more than we bargained for. We thought we were getting support troops, but we actually got specialists with years of civilian training. Exactly, Sarah nodded. And there are other areas where humans have similar cultural obsessions. Medicine, engineering, even cooking, we take these disciplines to extreme levels not because we need to for survival, but because we're driven to perfect them. I thought about the implications. If humans have this kind of cultural depth in other areas, we've barely scratched the surface of their potential contribution to the GDF. We haven't even scratched the surface of our own potential, Sarah corrected. Humans are just beginning to realize what we can accomplish when we combine our cultural obsessions with galactic technology and opportunities. 5 years after Sarah Chen first stepped onto that firing range on Station Nebula, I found myself attending a ceremony dedicating a new training facility. The Sarah Chen Advanced Marksmanship Academy would train specialists from across the GDF, teaching techniques that had once been considered human peculiarities but were now recognized as valuable military skills. Sarah herself was there, now a commander and head of the entire specialized warfare division. She had overseen the development of new training protocols, equipment specifications, and tactical doctrines that incorporated human marksmanship traditions into GDF military practice. As I watched her give a speech to the assembled graduates, I reflected on how much had changed. Humans, once dismissed as physically inferior and relegated to support roles, were now recognized as some of the GDF's most valuable specialists. Their cultural obsession with precision, their willingness to dedicate years to perfecting specific skills, and their creative approach to problem-solving had proven to be tremendous assets. The galaxy had learned that military effectiveness wasn't just about physical strength or advanced technology. It was also about the ability to push beyond perceived limitations, to find creative solutions to impossible problems, and to perfect skills to an extraordinary degree. After the ceremony, I approached Sarah. "You've changed things," I said. "Not just for humans, but for the entire GDF." "Humans changed things," she corrected. "I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to demonstrate what we're capable of." She looked out at the graduating class, a diverse group of humans and non-humans who had completed the demanding training program. "What's next?" I asked. "More of the same, I hope," she replied with a smile. "Continuing to push boundaries, to challenge assumptions, and to find new ways to solve old problems. That's the human way, after all." I nodded, understanding now what I had witnessed that day on the firing range. It wasn't just one exceptional human with a customized rifle. It was a glimpse into a species' unique approach to challenges, one that combined obsessive dedication with creative problem-solving to achieve what others considered impossible. As we parted ways, I realized that the galaxy had been fundamentally changed by humans and their peculiar cultural traditions. The GDF was stronger, more adaptable, and more effective because of their contributions.